Noah tries to explain privilege to Tate, who is a straight boy. You live in a world of privilege, Tate. That sentence made him go still. Not defensive. Just still. Noah's voice rose slightly. Who are you? What do you want? The way people respond to you, the way you can walk into a room and decide what happens next socially. Tate looked increasingly shaken. Noah stepped closer again, voice shaking now with contained anger. You don't even realize how easy it is for you to exist, Noah said. You don't have to translate yourself to survive, you don't have to negotiate for basic acknowledgement. Tate's eyes dropped. Noah. No, Noah said again, listen. Tate went silent. Noah pointed at him now, not aggressively but firmly. You had privilege in so many ways I never did, Noah said. And I don't mean money, I mean emotional freedom, social freedom, the ability to be open without consequences that destroy your life. Tate looked like he was absorbing every word like an impact. People like me don't get to explain what they want, Noah said. We're lucky if we're even allowed to say it out loud. His voice cracked harder now. And even then, we're still not taken seriously. Tate's face twisted in guilt. Noah stared at Tate with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. You can say you care all you want, Tate, he said, his voice trembling, but at the end of the day, you don't. He took another step forward. If you cared, you would have noticed. His jaw clenched. You didn't even notice. How fucking blind are you? Noah's voice echoed through the room. Susie figured it out before we even finished freshman year at Brown. He held up another finger. Mark figured it out in one afternoon. Another finger. Talia figured it out before you even got married when she read a letter I gave to her after you broke my shattered heart for the millionth time. His eyes never left Tate's. And Joey. Noah's voice caught. Joey figured it out before he died. A long silence followed. Everybody figured it out. His expression crumpled into disbelief. Everybody except you. He shook his head slowly. So tell me. How stupid are you? The words landed with crushing force. Tate stood frozen. For a moment he didn't blink. He simply stared at Noah as if the room had disappeared around them. His mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. His breathing became shallow. He instinctively took a small step backward, as though the weight of Noah's words had physically pushed him away. No. He whispered to himself. No. His eyes darted aimlessly across the room. Susie. Mark. Talia. Joey. Each name replayed in his mind like another piece of evidence against him. His shoulders slowly sagged. His confidence, so stubborn only moments before, vanished. His voice cracked. I don't understand how. He stopped. Because he was beginning to. His eyes filled with tears. He remembered Susie's strange looks whenever Noah watched him. He remembered Mark's irritation whenever Tate dismissed Noah's feelings. He remembered Talia asking questions that had once seemed oddly specific. He remembered Joey's quiet observations that Tate had brushed aside without another thought. None of those moments had made sense then. Now they all rushed back at once. His knees threatened to give out. He grabbed the back of a nearby chair to steady himself. Oh God. The words escaped as a whisper. His hand covered his mouth. I really didn't see it. He looked at Noah, horror spreading across his face. I thought I knew you better than anyone. His voice trembled uncontrollably. I was so sure. He laughed once bitterly at himself. I actually believed I understood you. Another tear slipped down his face. And everyone else. He shook his head. Everyone else saw something I couldn't. His shoulders began to shake. I've spent years asking you why you were angry. He swallowed hard. When I should have been asking myself what I had missed. He finally met Noah's eyes. There was no anger left in his own. Only devastation. I'm not crying because you called me stupid. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I'm crying because, for the first time in my life. He struggled to finish the thought. I'm afraid you might be right. The room fell silent. Tate couldn't defend himself anymore. There was nothing left to defend. But Noah wasn't done. There's no world where I say what I want and someone like you immediately understands the weight of it, Noah said, because you've never had to fight to be heard in the same way. Tate whispered hoarsely, I didn't mean to hurt you. Noah laughed once bitterly through tears. That's the thing, Tate, he said, you didn't even have to mean it. Silence. Noah's expression hardened again. You can call me your emotional anchor, he said, your buddy, you're whatever you needed me to be at the time. His voice shook. But I was also your charity case. Tate flinched hard at that. No, he said immediately. Yes, Noah said firmly, because I stayed in something undefined, unbalanced, and emotionally inconsistent for 22 years because I believed you when you said it mattered. Tate's eyes widened in horror. And I was stupid enough to believe that public humiliation, emotional distance, and silence were just part of loving you. Tate's breathing broke. Noah, please. No, Noah said again, louder now. Tate stopped. Noah's face twisted with pain and anger. And I was the stupid cunt who believed you after you trashed me in public so you could maintain whatever image you needed to survive your life. That word landed like a shockwave in the room. Tate physically recoiled. But Noah didn't soften. He didn't take it back. He just stood there shaking. Then finally, so, you can take your privilege, Noah said. You can take your ability to walk away and still have people waiting for you to come back. You can take your entitlement to think relationships will always resolve around your timing. Tate looked like he was falling apart internally. And you can shove it and get fucked, Noah finished quietly, voice breaking, because I'm done being the person who absorbs it. Silence. A long one. Tate stared at him like he didn't recognize him anymore. Not because Noah was different, but because Noah had finally become fully real in a way Tate had never been forced to see before. And that realization hurt him more than anything else that had happened that night. Noah stepped back again. This time Tate didn't reach for him. Not because he didn't want to, but because he finally understood. There was nothing left in Noah that would come back. Noah let out a long, exhausted breath, like something inside him had finally run out of patience instead of emotion. You know what it is with you, Tate, he said quietly. Tate's eyes lifted slightly, still wet, still broken, still trying to hold onto anything Noah might still give him. Noah shook his head. Your comfort privileged way of thinking, he said, voice tightening, it's like I'm being strangled from the inside out. Tate blinked. The phrasing didn't land as an insult first. It landed in confusion. Noah continued anyway. You're so privileged you can walk up to any girl and announce in front of 200 people that you like her, he said, and everyone claps or laughs or moves on. Tate's throat tightened. But if I did that, Noah went on, if I ever told people in high school who I liked, if I was honest, I would have been destroyed for it. Tate's expression shifted slightly, like he was trying to imagine it but failing to fully access the shape of it. Noah's voice sharpened. I would have lost everything, he said, my social standing, my safety, my respect, everything. A pause. The people I liked would have laughed at me, Noah added, or worse, told everyone else before I even had the chance to process it myself. Tate's stomach turned. Because Noah wasn't exaggerating. Not in tone. Not in memory. Noah shook his head again. You don't understand that kind of fear, he said. Tate whispered weakly, I never wanted you to feel like that. Noah let out a short, humorless breath. But I did, he said, because you existed the way you existed in my life. Silence. Noah's hands flexed at his sides. You're the rich boy who can have any girl he wants, any life he wants, and access to every privilege imaginable, he said. Tate's expression tightened. Noah's voice softened slightly, but only with fatigue, not forgiveness. I may have $80 million now, he added, but I don't have privilege the way you do. Tate's brow furrowed slightly. Noah continued. The only thing I have going for me is that I'm white and male, he said. And even that gets cancelled out by everything else about me that doesn't fit what your world considers acceptable. Tate shook his head slightly. Noah, I never judged you. You didn't have to, Noah interrupted. Silence. Noah's voice dropped again. Not accepting who I am and never defending my equality makes you a villain. You don't know me, he said quietly. Not really, I made sure you never knew me because I had everything on the line. That hit differently. Tate's eyes widened slightly. Noah continued. And you have nobody to blame for that but you, he said. You made it clear through your values, your perception, your behavior, that anything outside of how you saw me would have made me unsafe in your world. Tate's breathing became uneven again. Noah's tone sharpened. You think your biggest risk is rejection, Tate, he said. A girl laughing at you, big deal, I could end up dead or a social pariah. That sentence landed like a weight in the room. Tate froze. Noah stepped closer. And I lived with that reality, he said quietly. Every day, while you lived with the comfort of being seen as desirable no matter what room you walked into. Tate's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Noah continued, voice lower now. You don't realize what it was like growing up around you, he said, being close to you, being seen next to you. Noah's tone sharpened. Tate whispered, I protected you. No, Noah cut in immediately, you protected your image. That silenced him. Noah fought back tears. You never defended me, Tate, he said, his voice trembling. Tate frowned, that's not true. I'm not talking about standing up to a bully, Noah replied. Any idiot can do that, I'm talking about the day my life is actually in danger. Tate's expression faltered. What if I got cornered by 5 violent guys who decided I was someone they hated because of how I looked or acted? What if they wanted to beat me up because they thought I was something I'm not? You've never had to live with that fear. Noah wiped at his eyes. You've never had to wonder if you'd be the victim of a hate crime. You've never had to worry that someone would target you because they assumed something about you. You don't know what it's like to carry that around every day. Tate didn't answer. The color drained from his face as the realization settled in. He had always thought of protecting Noah as standing between him and ordinary problems, but he had never considered the fear Noah was describing. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since the argument began, he lowered his eyes. Tate started, but the words wouldn't come. He realized he did not argue. Only the uncomfortable recognition that there were dangers Noah had lived with that he had never truly understood. Noah's eyes filled with tears. What if a group of men wanted to kill me for who they thought I was, he asked. What if they had a gun, a metal pole, or a baseball bat? What if a jock found me in the shower and tried to straighten me out for something that doesn't even resemble my reality? Would you actually stand in front of me? Would you let them kill you instead of me? Would you protect me with your body? Tate stood frozen. Noah shook his head. I don't think so, he whispered. I think you'd turn away, or maybe even join in. The words hit Tate like a punch to the chest. His face went pale. What? He breathed, sounding genuinely horrified. He took an involuntary step back, staring at Noah as though he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. You really think that little of me? The question wasn't angry. It was heartbroken. Why not, Tate? Noah asked, tears running down his face. I've seen you beat up guys who weren't the stereotypical masculine kind of guy. Why wouldn't you beat me too? Tate looked stunned. Every time some tough, masculine guy looks at you and then looks at me standing beside you, do you know what they're thinking? Noah continued. Tate didn't answer. They're thinking, what's that loser doing around Tate? Why does Tate let somebody like him hang around? Noah's voice cracked. They don't think I'm worth anything. Tate's expression fell. No, Noah interrupted. You don't get to interrupt me. You asked why I don't trust you, and this is why. I've spent years believing that if the wrong people came after me, I'd be standing there alone. Tate stood motionless. The accusation hurt, but what hurt even more was realizing Noah believed every word he was saying. For the first time in the conversation, Tate couldn't think of a single thing to say in his own defense. He simply stared at Noah, heartbroken that this was how Noah saw himself, and how Noah believed Tate saw him too. Do you know all those people you hated seeing around me? Noah asked. Mark, Joey, all of them. Tate slowly shook his head. I got close to them because you couldn't give me what I needed, Noah said. I needed emotional vulnerability, I needed honesty, I needed someone who would actually let me know what they were feeling. You wouldn't. His voice grew steadier. So I found people who would be there for me. Tate lowered his eyes. Every time you got jealous, angry, territorial, or possessive, you were looking at the consequences of your own choices. If you had been emotionally present and open with me, I wouldn't have had to lean on anyone else. The words landed heavily. Those people, especially Mark, became a reminder of everything that was missing between us. Every time you saw him, you weren't just seeing another person, you were seeing the space you left behind. Noah took a slow breath. I don't want your 10% anymore, Tate. He looked him directly in the eyes. You can keep it. I'm done accepting scraps when I needed someone willing to show up for me. Tate didn't speak. For the first time, his jealousy didn't feel like anger. It felt like regret. He realized Noah hadn't replaced him. He had gone looking for the emotional support that Tate had never been willing or able to give. Noah's jaw tightened. Because any deviation from your version of me, he said, any moment where I didn't fit your ideal of what you thought I was, you would pull away. Tate flinched again. Noah stepped closer. And I learned that, he said, I learned that early. His voice cracked slightly. That if I wasn't exactly what you were comfortable with, I would be dropped. Tate shook his head rapidly. No, I never dropped you. Noah's eyes burned. You did, he said, over and over, in small ways, in public, in silence, in undefined space. Tate's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because Noah wasn't wrong in how it felt. Even if Tate had never intended it that way. Noah exhaled shakily. That's why I went to Mark, he said. Tate's eyes snapped up at the name again. Noah didn't soften. Because he understood what it was like to be invisible, he said, to be the boy people looked through in high school. Tate's chest tightened. Noah's voice dropped. And I was living with someone who was the opposite, he said. Someone who was so visible he was treated like a standard for masculinity, for desirability, for everything I was told I could never be. Tate looked like he was physically struggling now. Noah continued anyway. We couldn't be more different, he said quietly, if we tried. A pause. And that difference didn't stay abstract, Noah added. It shaped everything between us. Tate whispered, I never wanted you to feel less than me. Noah looked at him for a long moment. I know, he said finally. That confused Tate. Noah's voice softened, but only slightly. And that's the problem, he said. You didn't want it, but it still happened. Silence fell again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they had both failed to name for years. Tate's thoughts were spiraling now. I didn't see it, I didn't know it was happening like that. I thought we were just us, how did I not see it? And worse. If I didn't see it then, what else did I miss? Noah looked at him one last time. Not angry anymore. Just tired. I'm not saying you're evil, Noah said quietly. I'm saying you were careless with something you didn't understand. Tate flinched. Noah continued. And I paid for that. Silence. Then Noah turned slightly toward the door again. This time Tate didn't speak. Because for the first time, he understood that Noah wasn't just leaving him. He was leaving an entire version of their history that only Tate had been allowed to believe was harmless. Noah shook his head like he was trying to dislodge something that had been sitting inside him for years. I fled from your parents' house after my 18th birthday, he said, voice tight, because I knew what you were capable of. Tate's brows pulled together slightly. Confusion cutting through the grief for a moment. Noah didn't slow down. We're not compatible, he said flatly, not as friends, not as buddies, not as anything else. He gestured between them, sharp and final. You come from a world that is so different from mine you don't even notice it most of the time. You've got your head so far up your own ass you can't see anyone who isn't living with your kind of privilege. Tate flinched but stayed rooted in place. Noah's voice sharpened. Your worst fear was being abandoned, he said, laughed at, emotionally rejected. A pause. That was your definition of danger. Tate's throat tightened. Noah stepped closer again. Do you know what my biggest fear was? He asked. Tate shook his head slowly, unsure now, unsettled in a way that went deeper than anger or guilt. Noah's tone sharpened. You think your biggest risk is rejection, Tate, he said. A girl laughing at you, big deal, I could end up dead or a social pariah. That sentence landed like a weight in the room. Tate froze. Noah stepped closer. And I lived with that reality, he said quietly. Every day, while you lived with the comfort of being seen as desirable no matter what room you walked into. Tate's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Noah continued, voice lower now. You don't realize what it was like growing up around you, he said, being close to you, being seen next to you. Noah's tone sharpened. Tate whispered, I protected you. No, Noah cut in immediately, you protected your image. That silenced him. Noah's jaw tightened. Because any deviation from your version of me, he said, any moment where I didn't fit your ideal of what you thought I was, you would pull away. Tate flinched again. Noah stepped closer. I'm a small-town boy, Tate, in a large, bigoted, ignorant city, Noah said quietly, standing near his own bay window while rain traced silver lines down the glass. But I refuse to be small-minded or live in a small world. Tate looked up from beneath Noah, tense already, like he knew where this was going before Noah even finished speaking. I grew up around people who made themselves smaller every single day, Noah continued. Smaller dreams, smaller lives, smaller versions of themselves just to keep everyone comfortable. I watched people hide who they loved, what they wanted, what they believed in. I watched them apologize for existing. The room was still except for the rain pelting the roof outside. I won't do that anymore. Tate's jaw tightened. You think that's what I'm asking of you? I think you want me in pieces, Noah replied. The version of me you can hold when nobody's looking, the version you can love privately but never fully claim. That's not fair. No, Noah laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You never told me what we are to each other or to the world outside our childhood home. Tate stood slowly, frustration flickering across his face. You know it's complicated. No, it's difficult for you, there's a difference. The words landed hard between them. Noah swallowed, trying to steady himself. I could survive being alone, I mean that, it would hurt but I'd survive it. What I can't survive is shrinking myself so someone else can stay comfortable. Tate looked away first. That's the part you don't understand, Noah said more softly now. I spent my whole life feeling like something about me needed to be hidden, too emotional, too much, too honest, and then you came along and made me feel seen for the first time in my life. His voice cracked slightly. But being seen in private isn't the same thing as being loved out loud. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof like a second heartbeat. Noah stepped closer, eyes burning now with anger and grief tangled together. You keep asking me to wait for someday when you're ready, someday when things are easier, someday when people understand, but people like us can disappear inside of someday. Noah. No, Noah interrupted gently. You don't get to ask me to become smaller so you can avoid being afraid. Tate's expression faltered then, something wounded breaking through the armor he always carried. I love you, he said quietly. Noah closed his eyes for a moment at the sound of it. I know, he whispered, that's what makes this so painful, and I learned that, he said. I learned that early from being with you. His voice cracked slightly. Tate whispered, I never wanted you to feel less than me. Noah looked at him for a long moment. I know, he said finally. That confused Tate. Noah exhaled sharply. If you ever knew the real me, he said, voice cracking slightly despite how hard he was trying to keep it steady, you would destroy me. I was afraid you would put your hands on my body while choking the life out of me or turn your metal bat on me, crushing my skull. Tate's expression froze. Noah continued anyway, words finally spilling out without restraint. Or worse, he said, you'd decide I was sick, diseased, something wrong, something you'd step away from and never look at again. Tate shook his head immediately. No, Noah, I never thought that. I'd never physically hurt. You hurt me a dozen times every day we were together. You didn't have to think it if your needs were met, Noah snapped. Silence hit hard. Tate went still. Noah's chest rose and fell unevenly now, like he was holding back something that had been buried too long to come out cleanly. I left your parents' house, Noah said, voice lower now but more fractured, because I couldn't risk being seen fully by you and surviving it. Tate stared at him. Really stared. Like the sentence didn't fit any version of reality he had ever held. Noah's jaw tightened. His voice broke slightly. You would kill me physically and probably brag about it later to your macho, masculine friends. You repel everything that makes me me. A beat. Or you'd erase me with disgust. Tate's face twisted. No, I would never. But Noah was already moving. I was born this way. I can't help what I am or that my persona is an affront to your intolerant, ignorant morality. I made myself small so you could be comfortable, Tate. I've never been able to be open about who I am and what I need because you're incapable of being anything but a bigoted, ignorant, phobic individual. I'd rather live my life as who I am being proud and happy, without you than being uncomfortable around people like you or have to hide who I am and act like I don't feel what I feel. Enjoy being alone, but you won't be for long because I'm sure you'll replace me like 5 minutes ago because you never stop reminding me our entire teen years. There was 1 million girls waiting in line to share your bed while I had nobody waiting to share mine. Something in him finally snapped past the point of discussion. He shoved Tate back harder this time. Not violent enough to injure, but enough to break proximity. Tate stumbled, shocked more by the rejection than the force. I'm not waiting around for you to realize what I am. Have you make me feel like a monster, call me a pedophile who hurts kids, or have you creep up behind me with a bat and kill me? Noah didn't look at him anymore. The room was small, claustrophobic, Tate's childhood bedroom, walls still painted the pale blue he'd chosen when he was 12, before Joey, before everything. The posters were gone, replaced by bare walls and a single shelf of books. The bed where Noah had slept beside him for weeks now felt like a lie. Noah's hands were shaking, his face was red, blotchy, eyes were wet but furious. He had pushed Tate back, just a shove really, but enough to make Tate stumble against the dresser, the corner digging into his spine. You claim to love me, Tate? Impossible. Noah's voice cracked, but he forced it steady, each word precise, cutting. You don't know me, I might as well be a stranger to you, because if you described what a stranger was and who they were, you would be as accurate about a stranger as you would be about me. You don't know me, you can't logically, accurately, or validly love me. Tate opened his mouth but nothing came out. The words were a knife turning in his chest. I've hidden who I was for decades. Noah's laugh was bitter, hollow. Decades, Tate, you've never known me. You can't love someone who is not who they are around you. You don't know the real me. You think you do. You hold on to that so you don't have to resolve or face difficult issues. As long as who you think I am makes it easy and comfortable for you, who cares if it's the truth? Tate wanted to say that's not true, but the words stuck. Because wasn't it? Hadn't he been so desperate for someone gentle, someone safe, that he'd projected all his hopes onto Noah? Hadn't he ignored the shadows in Noah's eyes? The moments where Noah went quiet, the way he flinched at certain touches. You've never looked beyond anything you thought you knew about me, Noah's voice rose. So no, I don't love you because I don't know you. You make it impossible to know you, and I return the favor. You know as much about me as I know about you, so you can't love me. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Tate's breath came shallow. You wouldn't even love me if you knew the real me. Noah's voice dropped, raw, almost a whisper. And the saddest part is I didn't have the courage, the backbone, the balls to be who I was back then, and fuck you, fuck anyone who hates who I am. Noah's hands dropped to his sides, his shoulders sagged, the anger drained out of him, leaving only exhaustion. He looked at Tate, really looked, and there was nothing left but truth. No, Noah said, his voice shaking with anger. I was angry. He took a breath, years of frustration finally spilling out. I waited 22 years for you to tell me what I was to you. We've been adults for 9 years. It's been 1 year since we last shared a house. What a mistake. It was all a mistake. Tate stood frozen. I wasted years of my life waiting for somebody who couldn't even admit that I was important to him. Not to your teammates, not to the cheerleaders, not to teachers, not even to your own family. Noah laughed bitterly. I bet if you bought a puppy, it'd get more attention, social validation, applause, support, public labeling, and affection than I ever did. His eyes filled with tears. If I added up all the affection I got from your family, it'd be 3 times what I ever got from you. Your own mother called me her son less than a year after I came to live with you. I was 5 years old. Noah's voice cracked. What the hell were you doing? Why did it take you so long to say anything? He stopped for a second, then answered his own question. Oh, that's right. You never did. The words echoed through the room. Tate's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he couldn't hide behind sarcasm, pride, or anger. His face had gone pale. His lips parted as though he wanted to explain, but every explanation sounded hollow before he even spoke it. He remembered every moment Noah was talking about, every opportunity to tell Noah he mattered, every chance to stand beside him publicly, every time he chose silence because it felt easier. He had always assumed Noah knew. Now he realized Noah had spent 2 decades waiting to hear the words that never came. Tate lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered, barely audible. It was the first apology he had managed to say all morning, and it sounded painfully inadequate compared to the years Noah had just described. Tate noticed Noah hadn't looked away. Instead, Noah was staring at him with an expression Tate couldn't quite read. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't disappointment. It was an expectation. "What?" Tate asked, shifting uncomfortably. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Noah didn't answer. He just kept staring. The silence stretched on. Tate glanced away for a second, then back at Noah. "What?" he repeated. "What are you waiting for?" Noah's eyes searched Tate's face, waiting for something, anything. He waited another few seconds. Tate said nothing. Noah gave him another chance. The room was so quiet that neither of them moved. Tate looked confused, as if he genuinely didn't understand why Noah was waiting. "What?" Tate asked a third time. "Say something." Noah's shoulders slowly sank. The hope disappeared from his face. "Oh my God," he whispered. Tate frowned. "What?" Noah laughed once, but there wasn't any humor in it. "Oh my God." His eyes filled with tears. "You're hopeless." Tate blinked. "I just handed it to you," Noah said quietly. "I practically gave you the words." Tate stared back, still confused. "I told you exactly what you never did. I told you how other people showed me I mattered. I told you what your mother did. I told you what everyone else did." Noah shook his head. "And then I stopped." He looked directly into Tate's eyes. "I gave you an opening." His voice cracked. "I thought maybe, just maybe, after everything I've said, you'd finally say it." Tate's expression remained blank. Noah closed his eyes for a moment. "You still didn't." Another long silence passed. "You still couldn't tell me what I meant to you." Noah wiped at his face. "Well, you got lucky too late." He inhaled shakily. "I don't want you anymore." Tate's face lost its color. "I don't want us anymore." Another pause. "I don't want to be the person I was when I was with you." Noah's voice softened. "I'm Talia's son, I'm Terrence's son, they made me feel like I belonged." He swallowed hard. "All of my surrogate relatives are dead now." He looked at Tate one last time. "And so are you." Tate stood frozen. Only then did he realize what Noah had been waiting for all along. Not an apology. Not an excuse. Just a simple acknowledgement that Noah had mattered to him. And he had missed the moment. "You had 22 years to tell me how you felt," Noah said, his voice trembling with anger. "Then I even gave you another year after you abandoned me, a whole extra year for you to reach out." Tate's lips parted. "Noah, you could have called." Tate lowered his eyes. "You could have shown up." His shoulders sagged. "You could have sent one text." Tate swallowed hard. Nothing." The single word echoed through the room. Tate flinched as though he had been slapped. Noah looked him straight in the eyes. "So when you finally do figure out what you feel, write it down." Tate's brow furrowed, confused by where Noah was going. He took a hesitant step forward. "No, just let me." "And instead of giving it to me," Noah interrupted, "shove it up your butt and get fucked." Tate stopped in his tracks. The color drained from his face. For several seconds he couldn't even blink. "I don't care if you ever figure it out," Noah continued. "I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm done waiting for you to discover feelings you should have been able to say years ago." Tate's breathing became shallow. He reached toward Noah instinctively, then let his hand fall back to his side when he realized Noah didn't want him any closer. "Noah, I..." Again the words died before they reached his lips. Noah shook his head. "Too late." Tate looked sick. He searched Noah's face for some sign that this was just another argument, that there was still room to fix it. There wasn't. At this point, Noah said, his voice quiet but unwavering, Cottonelle matters more to me than whatever realization you eventually come to. Tate closed his eyes. His jaw clenched. He looked like he wanted to protest, to apologize, to explain why he had waited so long. Instead, he stood there in complete silence. For the first time in his life, Tate understood what irreversible regret felt like. He hadn't lost the argument. He had lost the opportunity to say the one thing Noah had waited 22 years to hear. Noah opened his mouth. Tate noticed immediately. For the first time in several minutes, a flicker of hope appeared on his face. He leaned forward slightly, waiting. Maybe Noah was going to take it back. Maybe Noah was going to say there was still a chance. But Noah stopped. His mouth closed. The words never came. Tate's hope faded. Noah looked at him sadly. You snooze, you lose, Tate. Tate's expression tightened. I have Riley now, Noah continued. I date Riley, and when I'm ready, I'm going to sleep with Riley. Riley is going to move in when I'm ready, and maybe I'll marry Riley someday. Tate looked like each sentence was another weight being placed on his shoulders. I don't even know if I'll be in love with the person I marry, Noah admitted. I hope I am, but honestly, I'd rather be with someone who loves me completely than someone who makes me spend years wondering if I matter. Tate looked away. It's your loss, Noah said, but it's too late. Noah. No. The firmness in Noah's voice stopped him. I don't want to hear anything after this. I don't want the explanation you should have given me years ago. I don't want the feelings you finally discover after I stop waiting for them. Tate swallowed. So don't bother trying to figure it out for yourself now, Noah continued. The train already left the station. He shook his head. You can't catch the train after it's gone, Tate. The silence between them felt permanent. Find somebody else, Noah said. Find somebody you can breadcrumb. Find somebody who will accept pieces of you and keep waiting for the rest. Tate's face fell. But I'm not that person anymore. Noah looked at him. I don't find you attractive as a buddy anymore. I don't want that role. I don't want to be the person who stands beside you while you figure out whether I'm important. Tate's eyes lowered. The only thing you ever loved, Noah said quietly, was your own image, your own pride, your own idea of yourself, your own dick. The words hurt because Tate knew there was truth behind them. Emotionally, I've been gone for 9 years, Noah continued. The only reason I stayed physically was that you wouldn't let me leave. Tate stood completely still. There was nothing he could argue against. Noah wasn't asking him to understand anymore. He was telling him that he had already moved on. Did you ever sleep with Joey? Tate asked. Noah stared at him. Really? Tate looked confused. What? That's what you ask, Noah said. After everything I just told you, that's what you want to know. Tate's expression hardened slightly. Did you sleep with my uncle? Noah looked down at the floor. The question hung between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Tate nudged Noah's arm gently. Did you sleep with my uncle? Noah slowly looked back at him. A tired, almost disbelieving smile crossed his face. I'll tell you when it's 2017, Noah said, and when 22 years have passed, maybe I'll decide I don't have the words. Tate froze. The meaning wasn't lost on him. Noah wasn't just refusing to answer. He was reflecting Tate's own pattern back at him, the years of silence, the waiting, the endless uncertainty. For once, Tate was the one being left without an answer. And Noah watched him realize exactly how that felt. You wouldn't do that, Tate stammered. His voice cracked. You wouldn't sleep with my uncle. Tears slid down Tate's face as he shook his head, almost pleading with Noah to correct him. You may have hated me, Noah, but you wouldn't have done that. Noah stayed silent. Tate stepped closer. You wouldn't have humiliated me like that. His breathing became uneven. You wouldn't sneak away and hide things from me. You wouldn't have chosen someone else just to hurt me. You wouldn't have built some secret life behind my back. His voice dropped. You wouldn't be that cruel. Tate looked directly at Noah. Say it. Tate pushed Noah gently. Noah didn't move. Say you wouldn't be that cruel. The silence was unbearable. Tate reached out and grabbed Noah's shoulder, shaking him slightly before pushing him back a few inches in frustration. "Noah, say something." But Noah didn't answer. He just looked at him. And that silence terrified Tate more than any accusation could have. Because Tate realized he wasn't just asking about Joey. He was asking whether Noah was still the person who would protect his heart, even after everything that had happened. When Noah still didn't respond, Tate's sadness turned into anger. "Why won't you answer me?" Tate demanded. His voice rose. "Why are you doing this?" But even as he spoke, Tate knew the question wasn't really about Noah anymore. It was about the years of uncertainty, the unanswered questions, and the fear that maybe he had waited too long to find out what Noah had been feeling all along. Tate couldn't escape it. "Noah, answer me." Noah didn't respond. That silence made Tate's chest tighten. "Answer me." Still nothing. Tate's frustration turned into desperation. "Why won't you answer me?" he demanded. "You have an answer, you know what happened, you know what you're doing." Noah looked exhausted. "Do you even hear yourself?" Noah asked quietly. Tate's face tightened. "No, I need you to answer me." "You want an answer now?" Noah asked. "Now." The question hit a nerve. Tate stepped closer. "Yes, now." Noah shook his head. "That's the problem, Tate. You always want things when you're ready, when you decide the time has come." Tate's breathing became heavier. "Noah. No, you don't get to spend years ignoring questions and then demand answers the second you feel afraid." Tate's emotions boiled over. He grabbed Noah by the front of his collar and shoved him back against the wall. The impact startled Noah. Tate's face was inches from his. "Answer me." His hazel eyes were angry, but there was panic behind them. "You're going to answer me right now." His voice cracked. "Answer me." Tate shook Noah's collar not because he felt powerful but because he felt like he was losing control of the only thing he had left, the belief that Noah still cared. Noah looked into Tate's eyes. He didn't see someone who was winning an argument. He saw someone who was terrified. Someone who had spent years refusing to say what he felt, but now couldn't handle the possibility that Noah had stopped waiting. Noah's expression softened, but only with sadness. "I'm cold." Tate froze. The words didn't match the fight. "What?" "I'm cold, Tate." The anger on Tate's face faltered. Noah looked away for a moment. "Why don't you warm me up?" Tate stared at him, confused. Then slowly, painfully, the pieces connected. Noah wasn't talking about the room. He wasn't talking about a blanket. He wasn't asking for Tate's body. He was talking about every time he had begged for emotional warmth, and Tate had avoided the conversation. For 23 years, whenever Noah asked questions Tate didn't want to answer, Tate had redirected him. "Go to bed. Be quiet. Stay with me. Warm me up." Instead of giving Noah words, Tate had asked Noah to provide comfort. He had turned Noah into the person who soothed him instead of becoming the person Noah could lean on. Tate's grip loosened. His anger disappeared. "Noah." Noah's voice was quiet. "That's what I've been asking for all these years." Tate stepped back. He finally understood. Noah had never asked for perfection. He had been asking for an answer. And every time Tate refused to give one, he had asked Noah to stay anyway. For a moment Noah softened. Not because the hurt was gone. Not because he had forgotten everything. But because he could see Tate standing in front of him, lost and overwhelmed, and some part of Noah still cared enough to give him one more chance. Noah took a breath. "Why am I here, Tate?" Tate looked at him. "Out of everyone you've ever met, why me?" The question seemed to catch Tate off guard. "Why did you bring me home when we were in preschool?" Noah continued. "Why did you decide I was someone you wanted to keep around?" Tate's expression shifted. "Why didn't you ever let me leave?" Silence. "Why did you fight so hard to make sure I stayed?" Noah stepped closer. "Why won't you tell me?" Tate looked away. Noah placed a hand against Tate's chest, right over his heart. "Why won't you tell me what you're thinking?" Tate swallowed. "Why won't you tell me what you're feeling?" The silence became heavier. "Why did you marry Chloe?" Tate's face tightened. "What was I to you?" Noah's voice cracked. What is the blue elephant in the room that has been following us since before we even knew who we were? He searched Tate's face. Why won't you ever tell me? The room went quiet. Tate didn't answer. Seconds passed. Then more. Noah waited. He gave Tate the chance. He gave him the opening. But Tate still couldn't say it. Finally, after a long silence, Tate spoke. Did you sleep with my uncle? Noah stared at him. The disappointment on his face was immediate. That's your answer. Tate looked frustrated. Answer my question. Noah shook his head. Why do you hate Wayne's? Tate's expression changed. Stop. No, answer me. I asked you a question. And I asked you one too. Tate looked away. Noah's voice became quieter. I'll answer your question when you answer mine. Tate said nothing. Noah nodded slowly. Okay. He stepped back. Then I'll see you in 22 years. Tate looked at him startled. Noah. But Noah was already done. Because he had spent 23 years waiting for answers. He wasn't going to spend another 22 waiting for someone who still refused to speak. Noah looked frustrated, but underneath the frustration was exhaustion. There is no reason for you to keep these secrets anymore, Noah said. You're 27 years old, Tate. What are you actually going to lose? Tate opened his mouth, but Noah continued. Your pride, your reputation, your social standing. Tate looked away. I used to believe you didn't know what you felt. I thought you were confused. I thought maybe you didn't understand because you were scared to find out. Noah's voice softened, but only slightly. Then I realized the truth. Tate looked back at him. Susie figured it out before I did. After she met you, she asked you what I was to you. Tate's expression changed. Noah watched him carefully. She told me you smiled. Tate went still. Not a confused smile, not a nervous smile, a smile that said you already knew. The words landed harder than Tate expected. You knew, Noah said, you just didn't respect me enough to tell me. Tate's face fell. Noah. No, listen. Tate stopped. Madison, that cheerleader from high school, called you a textbook narcissist. She said you always wanted to have all the answers, all the facts, all the control. Tate looked hurt. I don't believe everything she said, Noah admitted. But the part that stuck with me was this: you always know what everyone else is doing, you know every detail, you analyze everything. Noah pointed toward himself. But I'm sitting here not knowing where I stand. I'm sitting here wondering if I'm sinking, and you act like my feelings are some mystery you can't solve. Tate's jaw tightened. Noah. You want to know if Mark ever slept with me? Tate looked down. You want to know if Joey ever slept with me? His face became more tense. But you never asked the questions that actually mattered. Noah's eyes filled with anger. You never asked if I wanted it, you never asked if I was happy, you never asked if I was okay. Tate froze. It's always about what it took away from you. The accusation hit him. Because Tate knew there was truth in it. No matter what happened, you always found a way to make it about your loss, your humiliation, your jealousy. Noah shook his head. So believe whatever you want. Tate stared at him. In 2017, you can ask me again if you still want to. Tate's eyes widened slightly. But I'm going to handle this exactly the way you did. A painful silence followed. By not facing it. Tate's expression changed. And by not telling you. Noah stepped back. Maybe then you'll understand what it feels like to be left standing there with no answers. Tate looked devastated. For once he wasn't angry. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't demanding. He was just realizing that Noah had learned silence from him. And that realization hurt more than any accusation. Noah looked at him one last time. Maybe you'll have as much joy from the silence as I did. Tate lowered his eyes. Because he knew there was no joy in it. There had never been. Only two people are waiting for someone else to speak first. I'm done talking about this, Noah said. His voice wasn't angry anymore. That was what unsettled Tate the most. Noah sounded finished. I have a wonderful person in my life, Noah continued. I'm dating them. I met them on that cruise I went on after you abandoned me. Tate's expression shifted at the word abandoned. Noah. No, Noah said firmly. I'm not dating them because I'm trying to get one over on you. I'm not doing it to make you jealous. I'm not doing it to prove some point. He looked Tate directly in the eyes. I honestly don't care what you think. Tate flinched. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. I don't care if you approve. I don't care if you think it's too soon, too late, or anything else. Noah shrugged. It's my life. Tate stood silently, absorbing every word. You're never going to meet this person, Noah said, not because I'm hiding them, not because I'm trying to punish you. He paused. Because you're not in my life anymore. The sentence hit Tate harder than he expected. Noah continued. And if we happen to run into each other somewhere, or we're both invited to the same party, or we're both at Sunday dinner, who cares? He gave a small, tired laugh. We just happen to have the same friends, that doesn't make us friends. Tate looked down. That doesn't mean we're close, it doesn't mean you get access to me whenever you want. Noah turned away. So pardon me, I'm going to go lie down in my bed. Tate looked up. I'm going to think about my life, my future, and the person who actually chose to be there. Then Noah added almost casually. And yes, I'm probably going to think about your uncle. Tate's head snapped up. His face changed instantly. The jealousy was there, but underneath it was something else, fear. Noah. But Noah didn't stop. Tate watched him walk away. The anger he expected never came. Instead, there was a hollow feeling in his chest. Because for years, Tate had been terrified of losing Noah to someone else. But he was finally realizing the worst part wasn't that someone else might have Noah. The worst part was that Noah had already learned how to live without him. Noah opened his wallet slowly. Tate watched, already tense, unsure what Noah was about to reveal. Noah pulled out a picture. Tate's eyes narrowed. Joey. Noah looked at the photo. Wasn't he a looker? Tate's expression hardened immediately. He looked better without clothes on, Noah added casually, but I'll keep that between us. Tate's jaw clenched. Why are you doing this? Noah looked back at him. Because you're finally seeing what it feels like to not have all the answers. Tate looked away, clearly angry, but Noah continued. He liked me a lot. Tate's face tightened. He drove all the way from Arizona just to tell me about his condition. That made Tate pause. Noah's voice became quieter. That's what someone does when they care about you. They show up, they make the effort, they don't spend years making you wonder. Tate looked hurt. Don't compare him to me. No, Noah replied, I'm not comparing you, I'm showing you the difference. Noah opened his wallet again. This time he pulled out something smaller. A lock of black hair. Tate immediately recognized it. His expression changed. Noah. It was the lock of hair Tate had given him 10 years earlier, before they left for Brown. A piece of a time when Tate had still believed they would always be connected. Noah stared at it for a moment. Then he walked toward the trash can. Tate's eyes widened. Wait. Noah dropped it inside. The sound was quiet. But to Tate it felt enormous. Feel free to throw mine away too, Noah said. Tate stared at the trash can. I don't want anything from you anymore. His voice shook slightly. Especially your last name. Tate looked up sharply. Noah. Maybe someday when your parents are still around, maybe I'll let them adopt me. The words stunned Tate. But not as long as you're alive. Tate went completely still. I'd rather be run over by a truck than be your brother. The sentence hit harder than Noah expected. Tate looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. His anger disappeared. The jealousy disappeared. All that remained was shock and pain. Noah. His voice was barely audible. He looked at the trash can, then back at Noah. For years, Tate had been afraid of losing Noah romantically, of someone else taking his place. He hadn't understood that Noah was grieving something much deeper. The idea that they were family. The idea that Tate would always be there. The idea that Noah belonged with him. And now Noah was saying he didn't want even that. Tate swallowed hard. You really mean that? Noah didn't answer. And that silence hurt Tate more than the words. I'm going to bed now, Noah said. Tate looked at him, still stunned from everything that had happened. I'm going to think about Joey, Noah added, his voice deliberately sharp. While I jerk off, he was someone who actually knew how to show up for me. Tate's expression tightened. Noah shook his head. It's strange, someone can look so much like you and still treat me like a human being, like someone worth respecting. Tate looked away. Being a blue doesn't mean someone has to be arrogant or cruel, Noah continued. Joey proved that. His eyes returned to Tate. But you sure made me feel like that was all I was going to get from you. Tate's face fell. Noah. No, Noah said quietly, I'm done explaining. He walked toward the bedroom. You can think whatever you want, you can be angry, you can be jealous, you can tell yourself whatever story helps you sleep. He paused at the doorway. But remember this, Joey didn't hurt me because he respected me, you hurt me while insisting you loved me. Tate stood frozen. The comparison bothered him, but not because of Joey. It bothered him because Noah wasn't talking about looks, status, or competition. He was talking about the one thing Tate had spent years avoiding. How someone made Noah feel. Noah looked back one last time. Good night, Tate. Then he walked away. Tate remained standing there, staring at the closed door, realizing that for the first time, someone else wasn't competing with him for Noah. Noah had already chosen himself. In case you still don't understand, Noah said, his voice exhausted rather than angry, the only person you have to blame for losing me is yourself. Tate looked at him. You pushed me away, you lied to me, you kept things from me, you made me feel like I was standing outside a window looking into my own life. The words landed one after another. People who barely knew you at school knew more about you than I did. Strangers understood things about you that I spent years trying to understand. Tate's expression tightened. They knew how little you let me in. Noah. No. Noah shook his head. The only time you ever apologized was when you were afraid I was going to leave your bed. You weren't apologizing because you were truly sorry. You were apologizing because you didn't want to lose the comfort I gave you. Tate went silent. You needed me there so you wouldn't feel alone, so you wouldn't freeze at night. Noah's voice lowered. But you never stopped to ask if I was freezing too. Tate looked away. If you didn't need what I provided, would you have stayed? The question hung between them. Tate didn't answer. Noah gave a bitter smile. Exactly. He took a breath. You spent years treating my heart like it was optional, but expecting my presence to be permanent. Tate's face fell. Maybe you should add another thing to the list of things you refuse to fix, Noah said. Your inability to understand what you're doing to people. Tate flinched. Noah. Do yourself a favor, Noah said, turning away. Stop chasing answers after you've already ignored the questions for years. He paused. And I'm going to bed. Tate stood there unable to respond. The anger was gone. The jealousy was gone. All that remained was the painful realization that Noah wasn't trying to hurt him anymore. He was describing why he had finally stopped trying. Get fucked, Tate, Noah said, his voice cold and final. The words hit harder because there was no anger behind them anymore. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a challenge. It was exhaustion. I wish Joey were here. Tate froze. Before he could respond, Noah looked away, as if even saying it out loud had taken something out of him. I wish someone who actually understood me was here. Tate's face tightened. For years, he had been afraid of losing Noah to someone else. But hearing Noah say he wished for someone who had treated him differently hurt in a way jealousy never had. Because it wasn't really about Joey. It was about everything Tate had failed to give. Tate stood there silently, staring at Noah. And for once, he didn't have an argument. Because Noah wasn't asking him to compete. He was telling him he was tired of waiting. The best revenge, Noah said. His voice cracked slightly, and he sniffled as he tried to hold himself together. Tate looked at him. Noah wasn't yelling anymore. That almost made it worse. The anger had burned itself out, leaving behind years of hurt and disappointment. The best revenge is that all my friends know who I am. Tate's expression shifted. They know what I want, they know the kind of life I'm going after, they know what matters to me. Noah shook his head. And you're the only person sitting at Sunday dinner who doesn't know. The words landed heavily. Everyone else knows. Tate stared at him. They know things about me that you never bothered to learn. Noah wiped at his face. And they're not going to tell you. Tate frowned. Why? Noah looked at him. Because they don't believe you deserve to know. Silence. Especially Susie. Tate looked away. Noah took a shaky breath. I gave you 1,000,000 more chances than I should have. His voice became firmer. I kept waiting, I kept hopping, I kept believing that eventually you would decide I mattered enough to tell me the truth. Tate didn't speak. But you're toxic, Tate. The word hung in the air. You're like Chernobyl. Tate flinched. And I'm done wearing a hazmat suit hoping that eventually you'll show an ounce of kindness. Noah's eyes filled with tears again. An ounce of kindness. He repeated it quietly. That's all I ever asked for. Tate looked at him. An ounce of kindness would have been telling me whatever it is you're too frightened, too cowardly, or too selfish to ever explain to me. Noah stepped back. That's it. His voice softened. I'm done. Tate opened his mouth. Noah shook his head. Leave me alone. The finality in his voice made Tate stop. Because Noah wasn't asking anymore. He was telling him. And Tate finally understood that the hardest part of losing Noah wasn't that someone else might have him. It was that Noah had spent years asking Tate to show up, and now Noah had stopped waiting. Poor Chloe, Noah said. He shook his head almost sadly. She has no clue how impossible it's going to be for her to get inside your heart, to get under the wire or over whatever steel wall you have around your heart. Tate looked at him, but Noah continued. You never loved me, you didn't respect me, you used me. His voice became sharper. You used me as this narcissistic supply of yours named Noah, someone who gave you comfort, attention, and everything you needed while getting almost nothing back. Noah took a breath. But that store is closed. Tate's expression shifted. Go get your jollies, go get your feel-good fix from her, use her up. He looked away. You're like a mosquito. The words were quiet, but they landed. I don't have any blood left to give. Noah looked back at him. My emotional labor, my happiness, and my focus are going to be on Riley now. Tate's face tightened at the name. Because Riley doesn't give me 10%. Noah shook his head. Riley matches everything I give. The silence between them stretched. And if I really wanted revenge, Noah said, I wouldn't scream at you, I wouldn't fight with you, I wouldn't try to make you jealous. He paused. I would send you a wedding invitation. Tate looked at him. And I would have you show up and realize who I really am. Noah's voice softened. Not the person who spent years waiting for you to choose him. The person who finally chose himself. I'm leaving you, he said, forever, don't come looking. Noah turned and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Noe. Tate's voice stopped Noah as he started to leave the room. Noah paused but didn't turn around. Tate looked at him, and for once the confidence was gone. He sounded uncertain. Don't go. Noah slowly looked back. I can't tell you, Tate said quietly. The words hung in the air. I can't. Noah stared at him. Can't you trust me? Tate's voice cracked slightly. Can't you trust that I feel the way you hope I do? Noah's expression changed, but he stayed silent. Do I have to say it out loud? Tate asked. Do I have to confirm it? He took a step forward. Can't you just trust that whatever I'm not saying, I have a reason? Noah looked at him sadly. Tate's eyes searched his face. Couldn't you just stay? The question was almost a whisper. For a moment, Tate didn't look like the person who had avoided every difficult conversation. He looked like someone afraid that the person who had waited for him the longest was finally walking away. But Noah stood there quietly. Because that was the exact question that hurt the most. After all those years, Tate was still asking Noah to trust what he refused to say. Noah walked out of the room, down the stairs, and out the front door. Tate heard the hinges creak, the soft click of the latch, then silence. Tate turned and walked out of the room. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound that echoed like an ending that couldn't be negotiated. Tate didn't follow immediately. He just stood there, completely still. Like his body had forgotten what to do without Noah in front of him. Then, very quietly, the realization started to settle in: Noah hadn't just been hurt. Noah had been afraid of him. And Tate had never once known. Tate stayed frozen in the room long after the door slammed. The silence didn't feel like absence, it felt like pressure. Like the air itself had thickened around him, making it harder to breathe, harder to think, harder to separate what had just been said from what it meant. Noah's words kept looping in his head. If you knew the real me, you would kill me. Or call me sick. Or diseased. Tate's brows pulled together slowly, confusion cutting through the emotional wreckage like something sharper and colder. He didn't understand it. Not emotionally, logically. Because in Tate's mind, Noah didn't fit that picture at all. Noah was warm, intelligent, grounded in ways Tate wasn't, someone who noticed things others missed, someone who cared deeply, sometimes painfully so, someone who had stayed even when it hurt him. Tate sank down slightly into a chair without really realizing it, staring at nothing. What part of him would make anyone think that? The question repeated itself, quieter each time, like it was trying to find an answer that didn't exist. Tate thought back. High school, Noah was sitting beside him in spaces where Tate had always been surrounded by people. Yet somehow still paying attention only to Noah in moments that mattered. Noah was laughing quietly at something no one else noticed. Noah pulling back sometimes, yes, but Tate had always assumed that was just, Noah is being reserved. Not fear. Not self-protection. Tate rubbed his face slowly. He replayed Noah's words again. Not the accusations. The fear underneath them. I couldn't risk being seen fully by you. Tate frowned harder. That didn't make sense to him. Because in his experience, being seen was neutral at worst, desirable at best. Attention meant status. Status meant safety. Even rejection to Tate was just a social wound that healed with time or distance. But Noah hadn't been talking about rejection. He'd been talking about something final. Something irreversible. Tate stood slowly and walked a few steps across the room, restless now, like motion might organize the chaos in his head. What would make him think that? He muttered under his breath. He tried to reconstruct it from Noah's perspective instead of his own. He pictured himself at 18. At his house. At school. At parties. And then he tried to place Noah inside that world, not as Noah was now, but as Noah had been then. Quiet, careful, observant, not performing with confidence the way Tate's world rewarded. Tate's stomach tightened slightly as he thought of the difference. Because in his world, difference was noticed. And not always kindly. But still killed, diseased, destroyed. That part didn't compute. Tate shook his head again. No, he said quietly to himself, that doesn't make sense. He paused. Then added more uncertain. He wouldn't bait. But the sentence stalled. Because he couldn't actually finish it. Not because he disagreed with Noah's character. But because he realized something unsettling. He didn't know what Noah was afraid of specifically. Only that Noah had been afraid around him. Tate sat back down slowly, elbows on his knees. His mind drifted back to something Noah had said earlier. You didn't have to think it, you just had to be you. That line bothered him more than anything else. Because it implied impact without intent. Effect without awareness. Tate stared at the floor. Slowly a different thought formed, one he didn't want to touch but couldn't ignore anymore. What if I were never aware of what it felt like to be on the other side of me? His jaw tightened immediately at that. Because it didn't match how he saw himself. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't dangerous. He didn't hate Noah. He had loved Noah, he was sure of that. That was the one thing he had never doubted. But Noah had still been afraid. That contradiction sat in him like a knot he couldn't loosen. Tate stood again, more abruptly this time, packing once across the room. No, he said again, firmer, that's not what I meant, that's not what I did. But even as he said it, his voice didn't carry the same certainty it used to. Because Noah hadn't sounded confused. Noah had sounded certain. Terrified but certain. And that was what made Tate stop packing. He stood still again. For the first time, he didn't reach for a justification. He just stood in the absence Noah had left behind and tried, really tried, to understand what kind of world Noah had been describing. A world where being known wasn't comforting. Where being seen wasn't safe. Where love didn't protect you from exposure. And slowly, uncomfortably, Tate realized. He had never once had to think about what it meant to be afraid of someone simply knowing who you are. Not like that. Not like Noah. Tate stood there for a long moment, trying to force Noah's words into something that made sense inside his own frame of reference. Because from where Tate stood, Noah didn't fit the fear he was describing. Not really. Noah had money, not Tate-level inherited, polished, visible wealth, but still significant, enough to live comfortably, enough to move through the world without scraping for survival, enough that class didn't fully explain what Noah was talking about. Noah was also a white man, male, educated, verbally sharp when he chose to be, someone who, on paper, carried most of the advantages Tate had been told mattered in the world they lived in. Tate frowned slightly, thinking harder now, trying to be fair. So what was left? Noah wasn't physically intimidating, he wasn't loud, he wasn't performative in the way Tate's world rewarded. He was softer in presentation, more reserved, more observant, more careful with how he entered spaces. Tate's mind tried to attach meaning to that. Smaller, quieter, less traditionally masculine. That part made sense to him in a shallow, high school way. People teased differences, people targeted what stood out. But even as the thought formed, something about it felt incomplete. Because Noah wasn't talking about teasing. He wasn't talking about awkward social judgment or surface-level ridicule. He had said something far heavier than that. Tate sat back down slowly, rubbing his hand over his face. So what is he talking about then? He muttered. He replayed Noah's words again, more carefully this time. If you knew the real me, you would kill me. Tate shook his head slightly. That doesn't make sense, he said under his breath. He tried again, slower. Noah had access to money, access to education, access to mobility, access to independence, the same categories Tate was told defined privilege. So why did Noah keep describing himself like someone fundamentally unsafe in his own skin? Tate's thoughts shifted unwillingly to something more uncomfortable. Not what Noah had, but what Noah had to hide. And that was where his thinking stalled. Because Tate realized something frustratingly simple. He didn't actually know what Noah was hiding. Only that Noah believed it mattered enough to be dangerous. Tate leaned forward, elbows on his knees again, staring at the floor like it might organize the logic for him. If it's not money, he said quietly, and it's not status. He paused. His mind briefly circled back to Noah's wording again. The real me. Tate's jaw tightened slightly. That phrase felt like the key, but he didn't have the door. He thought back further, high school, college, the early years of whatever their relationship had been. Noah had always been careful, not dishonest, just selective, like he was constantly measuring what could be said safely and what couldn't. Tate had always assumed that was personality. Now it felt like something else. But still Tate's brow furrowed. Even if Noah was private, even if he was cautious, even if he didn't present himself loudly. None of that in Tate's experience led to fear of destruction. Not in the way Noah described. Tate exhaled sharply, frustrated now not at Noah but at his own inability to reconcile it. Because the only conclusion his mind could reach kept collapsing back into something mundane. Noah was overestimating the danger of being known. Or underestimating himself. Or both. Tate stood again, packing once more, slower this time. You're not, he started quietly, then stopped. He tried again. You're not someone people would hate for existing, he said to the empty room. And immediately something in that sentence felt wrong, not morally but logically. Because he realized he wasn't arguing with reality. He was arguing with Noah's experience. And those weren't the same thing. Tate stopped packing. Slowly, reluctantly, a new thought formed, one he didn't like at all. If Noah felt that afraid around him, it wasn't because Tate understood the threat. It was because Noah had experienced something in Tate's presence that Tate himself had never registered as harmful. Tate swallowed. That possibility sat in him uncomfortably. Not because it accused him of intent. but because it suggested ignorance. A gap he couldn't easily explain away. Tate looked toward the closed door Noah had walked through. For the first time, his confusion didn't resolve into dismissal. It just lingered. Heavy. Unanswered. And he was left sitting inside it, trying to reconcile the idea that someone could feel that unsafe next to him, while he had believed he was simply existing as himself. Tate didn't understand Noah at all. Not once during 22 years of their relationship, not a single moment that he could point to with certainty, had Noah ever acted like he was terrified for his own safety in Tate's presence. There had been no visible fear, no flinching, no instinctive recoil, no signs of someone bracing for harm. Noah had never looked at him like he was dangerous. So Tate's mind stalled on the accusation like it had hit a wall with no door. What the fuck would make Tate want to kill Noah? Even as the thought formed, it felt absurd to him in a way that was almost insulting to the bond he believed they had. Even if Noah had done something catastrophic, even if Noah had turned out to be a murderer or lied from the very first day they met or carried something unforgivable in his past that no reasonable person would accept, it still wouldn't push Tate toward violence. Not even close. Tate would never hurt a single blonde hair on Noah's head. That wasn't an exaggeration in his mind, that was baseline reality, fixed, non-negotiable like gravity. He had sold pieces of himself, his time, his energy, his emotional stability, his body, his entire capacity for attachment, to ensure that nothing would ever touch Noah in a way that could damage him. Even when Tate was angry. Even when Tate was confused. Even when he was distant or under pressure or forced into versions of himself he didn't recognize, the one constant had always been Noah. Protection, preservation, priority above everything else. Tate had given up entire versions of his life just to maintain the possibility that Noah would remain untouched by harm. Even if Noah turned out to be the worst monster imaginable, even if every assumption Tate had ever made about him was wrong, even if Noah had lied from the moment they met, even if everything was built on something unstable or incomplete, Tate would still not turn on him. He would look past it. He always had. Because Tate didn't experience Noah through the lens of conditional morality. He experienced Noah as something absolute. Something singular. Something that did not get evaluated the way other people got evaluated. Tate worshipped him in a way he didn't have language for, idolized him without framing it as idolization, built his internal emotional hierarchy around Noah without ever labeling it as dependency or devotion or anything that could be questioned from the outside. Noah wasn't someone Tate needed to forgive. Forgiveness implied wrongdoing that could outweigh attachment. For Tate, that calculation had never existed. There was nothing Noah could think, feel, do, accomplish, commit, abandon, or become that would cause Tate to step back from him in a way that mattered. Nothing. Not betrayal, not distance, not cruelty, not silence, not ambiguity, not fear, not misunderstanding. Nothing. Even the worst possible version of Noah, whatever that meant, would still exist inside the same protected category in Tate's mind. Untouchable. Preserved. Non-rejectable. Tate had lived his entire adult emotional life reinforcing that boundary without ever numbing it. And Noah had no idea. Not even a fraction of it. Hell, Tate had already proven it in ways Noah never fully registered. Times he had absorbed humiliation for Noah's sake, redirected conflict away from him, tolerated public distortion of their connection just to maintain proximity, prioritized Noah's comfort over his own reputation, over and over again, without ever turning it into a transaction or expectation. It had never been conditional. It had never been balanced. It had simply been a fact. And now, standing in the aftermath of Noah's words, Tate couldn't reconcile how someone he had positioned at the center of his entire emotional architecture could believe the opposite, that Tate would ever, under any circumstance, become the kind of person who could destroy him. Because in Tate's mind, that possibility didn't exist. It never had. Even now, even after everything that had just been said, even after the rupture and the distance and the finality of Noah walking away, Tate still couldn't reach a version of himself where harming Noah was even conceptually real. Tate still couldn't reach a version of himself where harming Noah was even conceptually real. And that was what made the gap between them so incomprehensible. Because Noah had been living in fear, and Tate had been living inside devotion, so absolute it had never once considered itself capable of being misread as anything else. Tate stepped back from the edge of the conversation, the weight of it still pressing against him even after he stopped speaking. He hadn't meant to hurt Noah, not with uncertainty, not with the way he couldn't pin the thing between them to anything solid enough to hold. It wasn't rejection, not in the way Noah seemed to be receiving it. It was closer to failure of language, like he was standing in front of something real and constantly coming up empty when he tried to name it. He could feel it clearly when Noah was there, the pull, the tension, the way absence felt wrong when they weren't in the same space, but every attempt to translate it into something definable slipped out of reach. He kept searching for a word, a concept, anything that would make it make sense in a way that wouldn't flatten it. Nothing he had ever been given for relationship seemed to fit without distorting what this actually was. And in that gap where definition should have been, he was left with something unfinished but persistent, something that didn't need a label to exist, only a way to be understood without being reduced. For 22 years, Tate never defined what he and Noah were to each other. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't avoidance in the way Noah sometimes assumed it was. From the outside, it could look like hesitation or emotional distance, like something unfinished that Tate refused to resolve. But to Tate, labels were never neutral. They were triggers, things that invited interpretation, projection, and escalation from people who were never actually part of the relationship in the first place. He had learned early that the moment something was named, it stopped belonging only to the people inside it. It became public property. It became a discussion. It became a version of itself that could be reshaped, exaggerated, or stripped of context depending on who repeated it. And in a city like Los Angeles, that distortion didn't stay small for long. Tate understood that even harmless things could be reframed when enough people were watching. Two friends could be turned into something else in a rumor alone. Proximity could become implication. Consistency could become suspicion. And once a narrative started, it rarely cared whether the people inside it recognized themselves in it or not. So he chose silence where definition would have been easier for everyone else. Not because he didn't know what Noah meant to him, but because numbing it would have handed control of it to people who didn't deserve to touch it. Over time, that silence became its own kind of structure between them. Noah sometimes mistook it for hesitation or even avoidance, as if Tate was refusing to commit to something out of uncertainty. But it wasn't uncertainty at all. It was a calculation. It was the understanding that some things only survive intact when they are not explained to an audience. And Tate, whether Noah saw it or not, had spent most of his life trying to keep the important parts of his world from becoming entertainment for anyone else. Noah thought Tate's silence was avoidance. At times he even convinced himself it was cowardice, an unwillingness to commit, a preference for comfort over the discomfort of clarity. It was easier to assume Tate was simply dodging definition, keeping things vague because it was simpler than saying something out loud that might require change or risk. But that wasn't the truth of it. The truth, if Tate had ever been able to articulate it cleanly, was more complicated and far less certain. Tate didn't avoid defining the relationship because he was afraid of the answer. He avoided it because he genuinely didn't know what the answer was supposed to be. Not in the way Noah meant it, not in any socially recognizable category that could be neatly named, filed, or explained to other people without distortion. What existed between them had started too early, lasted too long, and evolved in ways that never fit clean edges or simple explanations. It wasn't something Tate had chosen to structure. It was something he had grown inside of without ever noticing the shape it was taking. He understood pieces of it, though he rarely admitted even that to himself. He knew how it started. He knew what Noah had been to him in the beginning, how that presence had anchored him when everything else felt unstable, how it had become a reference point in a life that otherwise shifted too easily under his feet. He knew why it had lasted too, not out of obligation but out of continuity, out of something that never fully loosened its grip even as everything else changed. And he knew, in a quieter way, that what he felt for Noah wasn't interchangeable or conditional in the way most relationships were described. It wasn't something he measured or compared. It didn't require forgiveness in the normal sense because it didn't operate on the same emotional accounting system he used with everyone else. But that didn't make it simple. If anything, it made it harder. Because there were no terms for it that didn't feel like an oversimplification. No label that didn't shrink it into something smaller than what it was when he actually lived inside it. So when Noah looked at him and saw hesitation, Tate didn't correct him. Not because Noah was right, but because Tate still didn't have the language to prove he was wrong. Once when Tate was 13, Uncle Joey had asked a question he probably didn't realize would stay with him. It wasn't said with cruelty. There was no mocking edge to it, no intent to embarrass him or turn him into a joke. If anything, it came from the casual curiosity of someone trying to understand a dynamic that didn't make immediate sense from the outside. But it landed wrong anyway, not because of how it was asked, but because of what it forced Tate to consider for the first time. That something he experienced as natural, constant, and unspoken could be interpreted, examined, and categorized by someone else. Tate didn't have an answer then, he didn't have one now either. From that moment on, he stopped treating the relationship as something that needed explanation. Not because he was hiding it in any deliberate way, but because explaining it felt like diminishing it. The more he tried to turn it into words, the smaller it seemed to become, less real, less accurate, less capable of holding everything it actually contained. So he didn't talk about it. Not with Joey, not with anyone. It became something that existed outside language for him, something understood through routine more than description, through presence, through habit, through the simple fact of continuity over time. To an outside observer, the details could look strange. Two people sharing limited space, sleeping arrangements that didn't match what most would consider conventional, a closeness that didn't come with the usual public framing or explanation. But Tate never measured it against outside expectations. Outside expectations, in his experience, rarely made anything clearer. What mattered to him was simpler, even if it wasn't easy to articulate. There was consent in the life they had built, there was stability in it, and there were reasons behind it that belonged only to them. And because of that, he treated it the way he treated the few other things in his life that felt truly intact. He didn't analyze it. He didn't present it. He didn't offer it up for interpretation. Not because it was fragile, but because, in his mind, anything treated as sacred stopped being something you explain and started being something you protect. Don't get Tate wrong, he understood exactly what had happened between him and Noah from the beginning. He could trace it back without effort, as if the entire thing had been laid down in him early and only continued unfolding over time. He knew why Noah ended up sleeping in his bed as a child, why separation between them had always felt temporary rather than natural, why distance never seemed to hold for long, no matter how often it appeared in theory. He knew why they kept ending up in the same places, the same schools, the same orbit of decisions that pulled them back together even when life tried to scatter them in different directions. None of it was unclear to him. And because of that, it frustrated him when other people tried to define it for him. People like Joey, people like Terrence, people like Susie, people who only ever saw fragments and then tried to build explanations out of them, neatly packaged ideas that made sense from the outside but didn't match anything Tate actually lived. They kept reaching for familiar labels, familiar assumptions, as if familiarity equaled truth. To Tate, it never did. What he felt for Noah wasn't something he struggled to understand. It was something he refused to simplify. It wasn't dirty, and it wasn't performative, and it didn't fit into the usual categories people reached for when they ran out of patience for ambiguity. It was simply what it was, formed over time, reinforced through years of shared experience, and too deeply rooted in his life to be reduced without losing meaning. There were only a handful of people who knew how deeply that connection ran, and even fewer who had ever been close enough to recognize its full shape. Tate was one of them. And Wayne, for better or worse, had always been another. Tate didn't talk about that often, either not out of confusion but out of restraint. Some things in his mind weren't meant to be dissected in conversation. They were meant to remain intact. Because once other people started nomming them, they stopped being what they were. And Tate had no interest in letting that happen. According to Tate, everyone in Lowe's Angels had debated the relationship between Noah Lunas and Tate Blue since they were 13 years old. That was the age when boys were expected to change. It was the age when boys weren't supposed to watch television together cheek to cheek, share a bed, shower together, or wear each other's clothes. It was the point in their lives when they were expected to grow up, become more independent, and keep a safe distance from each other. It was what the heterosexual world expected of boys. They were supposed to stop being openly affectionate. They were supposed to avoid anything that could be questioned or misunderstood. They were supposed to fit into a narrow idea of masculinity where closeness had limits and vulnerability was something to hide. But Noah and Tate never seemed to follow those expectations. Their relationship continued in a way that made people notice, speculate, and debate. What others saw as unusual was simply the way they had always existed, two people who had grown up together and shared a bond that didn't fit neatly into the rules everyone else expected them to follow. There were times when Tate didn't remember the past he had with Noah. His seizures had made his memory unreliable. He couldn't hold onto every moment, every conversation, every ordinary day that had once seemed so important. Each morning he woke up with pieces of his past, but he never knew which pieces would be there. One day, Tate would remember the field trips they went on together. He would remember Christmases spent with Noah, the small traditions, the laughter, and the moments that seemed impossible to forget. Then the next day, those memories would be gone. Instead, he might remember something completely different: their school years, the routines they had, the moments when they were younger and closer than anyone understood. Every day was different. He remembered fragments. On average, Tate felt like he only had a small piece of his childhood available to him at any given time. The rest was a blank space he couldn't reach. And sometimes, he remembered things he wasn't even sure had happened. Were they repressed memories? Were they caused by his seizures? Was his brain protecting him from something, or was it simply failing him? Tate didn't know. And what terrified him most was the possibility that Noah would take it personally. Most of the time, when Noah brought up memories from their childhood, Tate pretended he remembered. He would smile at the right moments, laugh when Noah laughed, and act like the memory was sitting clearly in his mind. But sometimes, he had no idea what Noah was talking about. He wasn't pretending because he didn't care. He was pretending because he was afraid that if Noah knew how much of their life together was missing from his mind, Noah would believe those moments hadn't mattered. And the truth was, they mattered more to Tate than almost anything. He just couldn't always remember them. Andrew was always sniffing around. He had this idea that Tate had some hidden secret buried somewhere inside him, something that would explain why Tate could be so distant, so cold, and at times such an asshole. Tate thought it was a bunch of malarkey. He didn't have any secrets. At least he didn't think he did. The problem was that Tate couldn't always trust his own memories. Every day he woke up with different pieces of his past. Some memories were there, others were gone. Some days he remembered moments he had forgotten for years, and other days those same memories disappeared again. So who would really know? Tate didn't even know himself. He didn't know what he felt for Noah from one day to the next because every morning came with a different version of his past. One day, he might wake up remembering their childhood, the closeness they shared, and the way Noah had always been there. Another day, those feelings might be distant, buried beneath memories that had nothing to do with Noah. A few times a year, Tate would wake up and not recognize Noah at all. On those days, he only remembered a life before Noah existed, a time when Noah was just a stranger. And that terrified him. How could he explain feelings that changed depending on what memories his brain gave him that day? What Tate felt today might not be what he felt tomorrow. That was one of the reasons he could never tell Noah how he felt. It wasn't only fear. It wasn't only pride. It was the fear that he would finally say something he believed completely, only to wake up another day and not understand the words he had spoken. Tate was terrified of making promises based on memories that might disappear. Tate didn't stay silent when Noah begged for a window into his thoughts and feelings because he was cruel or because he didn't care. He didn't refuse to tell Noah because he wanted to punish him or keep him at a distance. The truth was more complicated. Tate didn't tell Noah how he felt because he didn't always know how to be honest about something he couldn't fully understand himself. So he avoided it. He would change the subject, reset the room, pretend everything was normal, or stay silent because the alternative felt worse. Lying to Noah was one of the things Tate hated most. He hated the feeling of saying something just to make Noah feel better when he wasn't sure it was completely true. He hated the idea of giving Noah an answer that came from a moment, a memory, or an emotion that might not exist the next day. So instead he said nothing. From Noah's perspective, the silence felt like rejection. It felt like Tate didn't trust him, didn't value him, or didn't care enough to explain. But from Tate's perspective, silence was the only way he knew to avoid hurting Noah with words he couldn't guarantee. He wasn't trying to hide the truth. He was afraid he didn't have one he could hold on to. Their entire childhood, Tate struggled to say what he wanted to say. So he showed it. That was the only language he knew how to trust. How could Noah think Tate didn't love him? Tate had brought Noah home when they were children. He had chosen him. He had kept him close when the world expected boys to grow apart. He made sure Noah was fed, taken care of, and never left behind. Tate showed affection in the ways he understood. He kissed Noah's temple. He held onto him at night. He wrapped himself around Noah, keeping him close as if his actions could say everything his words couldn't. Every day, Tate thought he was proving it. He thought Noah could see it. He thought Noah knew. But Noah had been waiting for something different. He had wanted the words. He had wanted Tate to open the door and let him see inside his thoughts, to explain what those actions meant and why Noah mattered. To Tate, his actions were obvious. To Noah, they were questions left unanswered. And that was the tragedy between them. Tate believed he had spent their entire lives showing Noah how much he cared. Noah believed he had spent their entire life waiting to hear it. Tate wouldn't lie. He couldn't bring himself to tell Noah that he loved him when he wasn't certain it was true. He wasn't going to say the words just because Noah needed to hear them or because saying them would make the situation easier. Tate wasn't in love with Noah, or at least that was what he believed. The uncertainty itself was part of what terrified him. He didn't think he was breadcrumbing Noah. He wasn't intentionally giving Noah small pieces of affection to keep him waiting. He didn't think he was love-bombing him or trying to manipulate him into staying. He had never wanted Noah trapped. Tate knew he had flaws. He knew he could be possessive. He knew he struggled when other people became close to Noah, and he knew sometimes his protectiveness crossed into something harder to understand. But he wasn't paranoid. He didn't believe everyone was against Noah. He didn't think Noah belonged only to him. He didn't want to control every part of Noah's life. The problem was that Tate's actions and his feelings didn't always line up in a way he could explain. He cared about Noah deeply. He protected him, he stayed close to him, he built his life around having Noah there. But when Noah asked Tate to name what it was, to define it, Tate couldn't force a word onto something he didn't fully understand. And to Tate, saying, "I love you," without knowing whether he meant it, felt like a betrayal. Because the one thing he couldn't stand was lying to Noah. Noah had spent years asking for answers Tate couldn't give him. He had spent years waiting for something Tate couldn't promise, and the longer Tate stayed, the more damage he seemed to cause. Not because he didn't care, but because caring about someone wasn't always enough. Noah needed honesty, stability, and certainty, things Tate struggled to provide when he couldn't even fully understand himself. Tate couldn't be honest about his situation because he didn't always know what the truth was from one day to the next. Those who tried to understand Tate's affection for Noah often wanted to put a label on it. They wanted to know if it was platonic or romantic. But they would have been wrong to assume it was that simple. What Tate felt, or what he thought he felt, didn't fit neatly into any of the categories he had been taught. It wasn't something he could easily explain or separate into one clear answer. The labels people used were supposed to make things easier. Friend, family, love, romance. But none of them fully described what Noah was to him. Tate had spent his entire life trying to understand a connection that existed outside the rules he had been given. He knew Noah mattered to him. He knew losing Noah felt impossible. He knew the idea of Noah walking away left a feeling he couldn't name. But naming it was the part he couldn't do. Because every word came with expectations. Every label seemed to demand an explanation, but Tate wasn't sure he had. So he stayed in the space between them, somewhere complicated, confusing, and impossible to define. And that was the place where Tate had always been with Noah. Noah in Tate's life was a gift of love. Noah had come about in the midst of an overpowering will to prevent, in the middle of circumstances that were bigger than either of them could understand at the time. He was a small piece of a puzzle that surrounded silent love, a piece that fit into a story that was never simple or easy to explain. From the beginning, Noah represented something that remained even when words failed. He was part of the quiet moments, the unspoken feelings, and the connections that existed without needing to be announced. Noah was a presence in Tate's life that carried meaning, even when Tate struggled to understand exactly what that meaning was. Noah was a small piece of a puzzle surrounded by silent love. A love that was not always spoken. A love that was not always understood. A love that existed in the spaces between actions, memories, and moments that Tate could never fully put into words. Tate needed Noah much more than Noah needed Tate. Noah had all the power and Tate didn't mind at all. He knew Noah had the choice. Noah could decide whether Tate belonged in his life, whether he wanted distance, or whether he wanted someone else beside him. It didn't matter if Noah didn't want Tate around anymore. It didn't matter if Noah wanted to sleep alone or with someone else. Tate would always be nearby. Because wherever Noah was, Tate would be there too. Not because Tate wanted to take away Noah's freedom, but because Noah had become part of the foundation of Tate's life. Even when everything else changed, even when words were difficult and feelings were impossible to define, Tate believed one thing remained true. Wherever Noah was, Tate would always be there too. Tate needed Noah in order to sleep. For years, Noah had been the person who made Tate feel calm, safe, and secure. Something about Noah's presence settled a part of Tate that nothing else seemed able to reach. It wasn't just the familiarity, it was the comfort of someone who had been there through so many versions of his life. Sleeping next to Chloe felt different. It was not the same. Tate knew Chloe was a wonderful person, but there was something missing. He wanted the comfort he associated with Noah. He wanted the presence of the person he had shared a room with, a bed with, and countless nights beside for 22 years. No substitute felt the same. No matter how much Tate tried to convince himself that he could move on, some part of him kept searching for the familiarity he had always found in Noah. So Tate waited. He waited for Noah to calm down, for the anger and hurt to fade into exhaustion, for the moment when Noah might finally let his guard down. Then Tate would try again. Not with demands. Not with anger. But with the hope that somehow, after everything, Noah would still allow him back into that place where Tate had always felt he belonged. Around 10 o'clock at night, Noah was asleep. He didn't realize there was a barefoot Tate quietly creeping into his room, moving carefully through the darkness like he already knew every step by memory. Hours later, around 4 in the morning, Noah slowly woke up. At first, he didn't understand what he was feeling. Then he opened his eyes. Tate was wrapped around him. Completely wrapped around him. Like an octopus. Noah stared for a moment, too tired to even be angry at first. Just days ago, Noah had told Tate he didn't want to see him anymore. They weren't buddies. They weren't best friends. They weren't whatever strange category Tate had spent years refusing to define. Noah had told him to leave him alone. And yet somehow here Tate was. Noah sighed. Tate was like a toddler sometimes. When Tate wanted something, he didn't stop. He could be stubborn, determined, and completely impossible until he got what he wanted. And for some reason, what Tate wanted was Noah. That was the part that made no sense. Because Noah was like everyone else, Tate could have found comfort from anyone. He could have friends, family, people who cared about him. But somehow, after everything, Tate kept coming back to Noah. Noah looked down at him, exhausted. It takes time with Tate.